So my name is Kote. I lead the developer experience team at Embark Trucks, which means that we're really focused on making all the workflows of developing the self-driving truck software and testing it super simple for our developers while also not compromising on security for the most part, because we have real assets out in the real world every day. They stop at truck stops, they go into random garages and random warehouses. So that's kind of a bit about what I do. We focus on both providing access to developers at rest while they're developing, but also there's a huge component of live support that is necessary on the road still. So a bit of background about Embark. We're the longest running self-driving truck program in America. Been operating since about 2016 with kind of long focus on the trucking industry and kind of long-haul commercial routes. We're trying to optimize and make the transport of goods across the country more efficient, faster, and cheaper. Namely, we're able to, for example, circumvent the 10-hour limit that the human drivers have for driving on the road and deliver something that takes 2 days by a human driver in 1 day. And it kind of extends as you hit the longer and longer routes and you're trying to go coast to coast. We've been self-hosted teleport users since 2018. Mostly we chose it because it was free and it seemed to work, which is a good decision in retrospect because we've been able to kind of grow our usage as teleport, got more advanced, and we're a teleport enterprise user now, and we'll kind of get to how we're using it in a second. And up until recently, we were mostly focused on developer access to our test fleet, which meant that these machines are in the office, there's always a person there who can restart something or replug something and reboot the computer. As we're moving further away from that into production vehicles and talking about removing the driver from the car, there's no longer a person who can do a lot of the stuff. So we need to be able to have self-healing software. We need to be able to have a good emphasis on monitoring and diagnosing things from afar. So as I mentioned, primarily we're focused on test and dev fleet access up until this point. There's no requirements for any sort of kind of reliability, really no requirements for security as long as not a random person can get in. And these vehicles are primarily either completely stationary in the office or they're on the road, but there's 2 people in the car. Again, we can call them if we really need something executed and tell them what to run line by line. So no sort of access controls. Over the last year, we've been moving more to developing our production fleet. Production fleet is meant to have no human in the vehicle at all. And since there's no human, there's less control directly that we have of the vehicle, so we want to be very careful about who has access to this vehicle and when. So access has to be conditional for engineering and operations and really not be kind of universal as we've been used to up until this point. So a bit of how we use teleport. We obviously use tokens that are stored in a secret store. Listening to the first talk here may not be the best way to do this, so maybe we'll revisit that. But we provision the vehicles with the tokens, we put them on the road, and we take heavy advantage of dynamic labels to control what sort of access patterns, what sort of access are we giving to the vehicle for our company. And these dynamic labels are able to query endpoints and then set them. So sometimes a vehicle can go from test fleet to production level. Sometimes it comes back and more development on it is done. So we don't want to create extra friction if the vehicle's not going to be live on the road. And the 4th step here is access. Kind of the reason we use teleport from the very beginning, that it just worked, and then the use cases we've developed as we moved closer to the production fleet, we're able to continue using this and take advantage of kind of like the just works bit, which is really nice. So we've been using teleport for a while. We currently still have other ways of getting to our vehicles and really hoping to get to the place where teleport is the way that we access our fleet. Some of the reasons we like teleport a lot is because observability is baked into the agent that we install on the vehicles. So we're not operating in the cloud, which means that our connection is not always to be trusted. So understanding the state of the teleport agent on top of our other networking monitoring is really helpful, so we at least know what the state is, and if we can't access the vehicle, we know why we can't access it. The SSO integration is really great. We cannot spend any time focusing on authentication or authorization. We use Okta as our SSO provider, and everything maps into teleport, which is really great. Kind of eliminates a lot of, I have to configure something in Okta, then I have to configure something for my SSH access. We just configure stuff in Okta, and then it all maps in very nicely. And finally, something we started taking advantage of recently is request-based access and granular control of vehicle access levels, which means that a production vehicle cannot be accessed by anyone at the company without an approval from our operations team. And furthermore, we can bake in things like between 2 and 3 p.m. vehicle is open for access because that can sync with our external schedule, which means the vehicle is at rest, it's at a yard. So the API integrations of Teleport are really great as well, where we can really make our own decisions about what to do with the access request based on the location of the vehicle, its state internally, and things like that. That's all I had. One thing I like to mention is that we're actively hiring cloud infra engineers, data engineers, and backend software engineers for our telematics stack. So if you're all interested in working at Embark, please come find me after. Otherwise, happy to cut here or answer any questions. No, we've just been using tokens for a while. And we've kind of onboarding onto this very tight access controls flows at the moment. Maybe it's 2 months old. Oh, the question was why don't we use certificates instead of tokens? And the answer was that we will, but we have been using tokens for a while. So as we've kind of been validating a lot of this request access and dynamic labels, it's path of minimum effort. Yep.
So is the access going over a mobile network, or how are the trucks connected?
Yeah, so the question was if the access goes over the mobile network. Yes, it goes over LTE. So you have to also deal with things like IP addresses changing and detecting that. So a lot of work we do is less on okay, this thing works great when you're in a warehouse, but then a lot of ifs come from being on the road, and sometimes the network just cuts out. Sometimes it's really bad. Yeah.
Any other questions?
You said you're doing tokens, right? What's your process for rotating those?
We don't rotate them at the moment. We kind of trust them that the vehicle is only accessible via one link and there's no other access onto the vehicle from, no one can go and plug in a USB. And we have mechanisms for revoking the tokens in case they get compromised.
You mentioned utilizing the Teleport API. How are you using that today, and what are you modifying? What objects are you modifying with the API?
Yeah, so currently we're using the Slack integration, and we have the API integration in the works so like I was saying, the production vehicle can be doing a production task, which is it's on the road, and we really want to have the operational constraints of it being live on the road. Sometimes it will come back. So we sync stuff like our schedule for what the vehicle is doing and location. So when the API request comes in, we can sync that with where's the vehicle, what state is it in, and then we can auto-approve or deny those requests. So sometimes you just want to auto-approve because the vehicle's in a warehouse, so there's nothing to worry about there, or nothing, but.
So just in summary, you're using access, you're auto-approving access requests via the API, and that's the only thing you're doing with the API.
Based on some conditions,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, what were you using before Teleport, and how has your life changed since Teleport?
I didn't hear the first part.
What were you using before Teleport, and how has your life changed since Teleport?
We've been using Teleport for a long time, 4 years. We, in parallel, use something called NetCloud Perimeter for kind of direct SSH tunneling, and it's very finicky, and Teleport is not. So life's great.
Yeah, so when you, question about the tokens, when you issue the tokens to, let's say, a device or fleet, right? How do you make sure that, the tokens really getting to the, to right server or device that you're giving?
Yeah, so we currently, at least how we operate, we don't provision the device itself, we provision the drive where a lot of the secrets are stored. So that maps one-to-one to the device, basically, and a human plugs it in right now. Our scale of production vehicles is still not, we're not dealing with thousands of vehicles, so we're able to get away with, provision a drive, plug it in, and it's for that vehicle.
Any other questions? No.
Can you talk through your use of dynamic labels?
Yep. So config supports dynamic labels. We have endpoints, right? Like I was saying about the previous question, right? We sync the auto approval requests for where the vehicle is and what the state is. Similarly, we can say query our endpoint and say what's the label on this vehicle, and so is it dev, test, or prod, and then based on that, the access rules work based on the labels. The labels get communicated out.
And just to follow up on that, so are those requests going out over the internet?
Correct.
And how are you confirming that that device is who it says it is? Is it MTLS
Yeah,
based?
so we use
or-
certificates there to authenticate to our APIs.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So I'm curious, you mentioned managing complexity around networking for accessing the actual, vehicles and endpoints when they're over LTE. What's your solution for, service discovery of those endpoints? And is it always teleport agent for human access, and is it a different solution for machine-based access?
So the vehicles communicate to us always. We don't really discover them because on LTE there's no realistic way for us to do it. So once the vehicle is booted up, it kind of does the initial, hey, I'm truck number 3, and then we register it. But we also know what the vehicle certificates are expected. So once they do make the communication, we also ensure that it's not someone pretending to be truck number 3, because the certs are also mapped internally to the identity of the vehicle with some identification.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Ray.
Cool. Thank you.